Join us as we speak with a whole host of expert navigators through the land of parenting. They'll offer you stories, validation, and a few directions to help you find your way if you're feeling a little lost. Welcome, parents. We're joined today by Dr. Theresa Kidd and Dr. Miriam Kirby. They're both clinical psychologists and amazingly experienced in the areas of autism, mental health, support for families, and neurodivergence. I'm so thrilled to get to speak to them. I think they've got amazing insights to offer to families, particularly those who are navigating and journeying through neurodivergence, and all families, because so many of our friends and our loved ones are also experiencing autism, ADHD, all sorts of things. So both of them are really passionate and really focus in on increasing family quality of life and bringing a neurodiversity affirming perspective. So welcome to both of you. It's lovely to have you here.
Thanks, Belynda. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Great to be here.
So I'd like to start by asking each of you in turn if you will share just a little bit about yourself and how you got to this point and why you're passionate about, this podcast is about mindfulness, attunement, self-care, play and self-care, why you're passionate about one or all of those things and your perspectives on it all. I'd love to hear a bit more.
Yeah, so I guess, I've been a clinical psychologist now for over 20 years. And then during that time, I've also had my own family. And so just based on my lived and clinical experience, I feel like it's just been an evolution over these years, figuring out, preconceived ideas based on my early training and, before I was a parent, what I might have thought parenting was like. And then when you really get to do the work as both a clinician and a parent, you can really evolve the way you work and how you understand things. And I really love the MAPS, what MAPS stands for in your model, mindfulness, attunement, play and self-care, because I really think that's the direction that I've been moving in towards in my work and personal life. Moving from, feeling like you have to do things or fix things or get people to move through particular stages in a particular order versus going, oh, hang on, let's just get back to basics. Let's just connect with the person we're with. Let's just think about what we're doing and what that person needs. And I guess the playfulness part can really help as well, like with things like regulation and connection. So, yes, I really appreciate, those four characteristics that you are highlighting in this podcast.
Gorgeous. Thanks, Miriam. What about you, Theresa?
Well, I started working in the disability and mental health fields very early on, from the age of 18. So I had a strong connection, I suppose, with those fields. And but it wasn't until I had my children and I was very focused on, based on our training, attachment, because I knew, in those first 3 years of a child's life, it's so important to establish that strong attachment with your child. So that was a real focus of mine. And I started an attachment parenting group at the time. I was living in Queensland, and it was the first one, within Australia, and we became affiliated with this American attachment parenting organisation and did a lot of work around conscious parenting. So really trying to be in the moment. So that mindfulness, I suppose, is that you are focusing on as well. And then when my eldest child turned 6, we realised that his spirited way was a bit different from the norm. So we organised a diagnostic assessment for him, and he was diagnosed with high functioning autism at the time. We don't use those functioning labels anymore, but then from there, I did a deep dive into autism, as most mums or parents do once their child is diagnosed, and that even though I had worked with a lot of autistic people across time, they presented a bit differently to how my son presented. So I was really trying to help him because he was having a really hard time with just, being in the world. Had a very high sensory sensitivities, was highly anxious. And after more deep diving, I discovered the pathological demand avoidance profile when he was 10. So he's now 27. So I've been deep diving into PDA for many years as well now. And since that time, all of our family, align with the neurodivergent profile and either self-identified or have received formal diagnoses. And, also with ADHD as well as autism. And PDA. So I have our youngest child was late diagnosed because the ADHD was so strong for her that it wasn't until she was 17 that she received an autism and PDA profile, an autism diagnosis. So yeah, we I suppose that's been the reason, the why for the Kidd Clinic, because we didn't have a clinic like this when our children were younger, and we weren't able to find professionals who understood that PDA profile, or practiced in that very conscious way and taken into account the child's needs and that the importance of connection and attunement.
Beautiful. It's such a joy to work with professionals who are really conscious of those ideas, who really foreground those ideas. I think it makes such a difference. I'm listening to you both, hearing the sort of the professional and the personal coming in there, and I find that really interesting how often those of us who work with families have our own stories there. One of the things I'm curious about is if you've got a story about a map or a set of ideas you've found helpful either for yourself and your own family or for the parents that you work with when parenting feels overwhelming, as it can quite regularly. So we're hoping that this podcast offers parents some practical ideas, and I think stories is such a beautiful way to share those practical ideas. So what have you found offers you a map?
I really like the CPS model from Dr. Ross Green. So he has authored a number of books. One of them is The Explosive Child, and we've been lucky to host him over the past 3 years. He's been to Perth 3 times now, and definitely each time we listen to him, we're learning more about understanding the difference between a child, that perception that a child won't do something or is being non-compliant versus a child who can't do something because they don't yet have the skills or the expectations that we're having of them. They just can't meet them at that time because of skills or lack of capacity. So, and just that importance of having the connection and listening, thinking about the child's perspective, whether they're able to share it verbally with us, they're just really holding their voice and perspective in mind, and really thinking about the nervous system as well. So rather than being focused about, more behavioural approaches, I think developing an understanding of how, the nervous system is really at the foundation of all our responses, really. And so if we can have that connection and understanding of our young person and understand ourselves as well to be able to co-regulate with them, then we're really going to be in a better situation for that providing support. So I know that personally as a parent, things could be quite intense, like when emotions would get heightened, early, when I was, early in my parenting journey, that sort of early childhood phase, more around when there might be more tantrum and acting out behaviours. That was really triggering for me on many levels because I liked things to go a certain way, or I had a routine, or I had expectations, and just sensory-wise, just the sound of that experience could be overwhelming, and then I could get really dysregulated. And so then talking to parents in my work life when they're telling me about some of their struggles, sometimes I felt, I guess I understood their perspective because it was happening to me at home, but also thinking, I should really know how to do better at this. So I think that's when I did start to think a bit more about my parenting and look to different resources and almost, get permission in a way from some of the things that I was reading about to, take a step back and go, hang on, I don't have to win these fights, or, they don't always have to do what I ask them to do. Maybe I'm expecting things based on my needs rather than, what's really the best for everyone in that moment.
Yeah.
Just, stopping to think a little bit and draw from different sources. Like I also really love Mona Delahooke's work. That was another light bulb moment when I started reading her work. She has the book Beyond Behaviours and Brain Body Parenting. That was I hope I've improved. Sometimes I get feedback about my parenting.
Don't we all?
Still, I guess I'm trying to have that connection and spend time and understand my young people's points of view and take on board their feedback even when it's difficult.
Yeah.
It's great skin as a parent.
That's right.
I love that you started with really bringing that awareness of them as a good human doing their best in that moment, that they're not choosing. And then that nervous system awareness really helps with that, doesn't it? That perspective. Yeah,
absolutely. I think my other little gem was, the Circle of Security program that's The Wise Mind, the theme of the sharp music. But also I did latch on to the part about the good enough parenting, that we are really all doing our best most of the time. Yeah. And we don't have to get it right 100% of the time. It's really a learning journey.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And I think that, we often talk, Miriam and I, run quite a few trainings and groups, and we often talk about that social clock as well. So as parents, and I definitely felt this, with my children, is that we often compare, where our children at, or how other people are parenting compared to how we're doing in our parenting, or how our children are progressing in terms of development. So that social clock, we can feel it ticking, and that can place more pressure on us. And then in response, we place more pressure on our children, and then they're going to feel, more dysregulated. And then we're going to need to, put more energy and work into helping them feel regulated. So we talk about throwing out the social clock, particularly if you have neurodivergent young people, because their clock is just going to be their clock. It's not going to be one that is the mainstream clock. So it's really difficult. I remember when my son was little, and when I was driving, stating my memory, but I was driving past a football field of a school, and there were all these boys out there playing football, and I just thought, wow, that's just never going to be my son. Yeah. And I remember it was just such a sad moment, and felt that loss. But, generally around that, it's, probably never going to be him playing football. But, he does other things. He goes and does indoor rock climbing now, and he goes to the gym a few times a week, and he goes and does Jacob's Ladder. And, so he's had his own social clock. Yeah. He's going for his driver's license now at 27. So, that there's things that he's doing at a different time. But he's been to university and he's got a degree. He never went to school. So we did really follow his where he was at. And I think that for me was my, the best thing I probably, or we as parents did for him, because I found this woman years ago, on the internet, and she was, and her page was called Shine with Unschooling. And, school was not going to be a place that was going to be able to accommodate our child, as he had those explosive, behaviours. And so we knew that, we would that homeschooling would be the best option for him. But because of the PDA profile, we also weren't able to teach him in the way that you'd normally teach him if he was homeschooled. So, and so what we did was unschool, and we ended up our middle daughter didn't mind, doing some homeschooling and going to classes. She was more traditionally academic in ways. So we just sort of switch it up depending on the child, whereas our youngest with the very strong ADHD profile, there was a lot of movement required in his sort of learning and had to be very interest-based as well. But what I would do is basically look for that shine in each of them, and that would be my focus. Really, if they woke up in the morning and was like, I want to know all of the Pokemons or whatever, we'd be researching them and printing them out and following that interest. So it can be, very time-consuming and, definitely, like Miriam, had lots of parenting moments that weren't, perfect and, needing to find that balance as well between, I was doing a PhD, I was homeschooling children, I was running lots of groups for autistic, young people. So just doing all of the things, it's often about just, trying to also think about where you are as a parent in that whole mix and trying to find ways, and that's a lot of the work that we do. We do a lot of just purely parenting work at our clinic too, to help to strengthen parents and for them to be able to support their young person, because that does take energy.
Oh, yeah.
And so yeah, it's been a journey.
Yeah, and I'm really hearing the kind of the overlay there, that the shine. I love that. That's a beautiful little image of finding the shine in your child, with that same thing that Miriam was talking about really seeing that they're doing their best and they're, I think, what's the saying? They're having a problem, not being a problem.
They're having time, not
and meeting the needs. It's lovely. So again, thinking about this model of a map for parents, and we know that the map changes constantly. Just when we get to grips with it all, we need a new map. But what's been a true north for you? What's been something that you come back to again and again, and particularly for parents listening in, feeling a bit lost, feeling a bit overwhelmed? What's a really small actionable step you would offer to them?
I think trying to connect with yourself first, because if we try and respond to anything that might be happening for our child, particularly if they are having a hard time, we're going to be responding in that reactive state, and it's probably not going to be beneficial for the young person. You'll probably feel guilty yourself about your reaction later on, and it also, can weaken the relationship between the parent and the child. Not that it's, of course, it's all irreversible. Or reversible, I should say, not irreversible. So I think, as a parent, it can be really helpful just to, for myself, if I just start to notice something that doesn't feel quite right in me, it might be that I'm feeling, that my stomach's sort of turning over a bit, or I'm taking very shallow breaths, or, I can't really focus. I'll just try and stop and just think, what's happening for me right now? So thinking about those interoceptive cues, first of all, what are we feeling in our body, and then trying to describe how we're feeling, which lots of our, autistic community have difficulty with, and we know that's called alexithymia now. We can be high in alexithymia, which makes it difficult for us to be able to describe what we're feeling. And then, of course, it's hard for us to get support for that. But, for myself, I've learned about, what it is that I'm feeling, obviously been through my psychological training as well. So I'll connect with that feeling, and then I'll try and think about where that's come from. And usually it's a leftover feeling from an interaction we've had early in the day. We might have received a letter with it, which is a big bill that we, for something, and we're thinking how we're going to pay that bill. Or it might be that, we've been on the phone to our mother-in-law and she's telling us, how our child should be, or whatever it might be. Once I know what it has caused that feeling in me, then I can just sort of sit with that, breathe into it, or I can, think later, about how then I might address, whatever it is that's caused me to feel that way, whether I want to have a conversation with that person or whether I want to leave it. But it gives me more control over how I'm feeling in that particular moment. And then I can respond, more effectively to my child because I've taken care of my own feelings. So rather than having that reaction, I want to consciously respond as much as I can. Of course, that's not going to always happen. We will have those reaction times, and that's also okay. We can repair those ruptures that we have with our
good
child at any time. Yeah, that good enough parenting. But yeah, I think, just us being able to regulate ourselves, then we're going to be able to help our young person to regulate, because our young people are not going to be independent in this for quite some years. As much as teachers might say to us, I want this child to be independent in regulation, that's not a realistic, not something that's going to be realistic, most likely, and definitely not all the time. So, I think just that connecting with ourselves and then being able to respond has been really helpful for me.
Beautiful. It's almost like the ultimate act of self-care, isn't it? Is instead, a bubble bath's great, but really tuning into what's going on for us so we can show up in ways we want to. Yeah, it's really powerful. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think if we can't, if that feeling is too overwhelming, we can verbalise that. How great is it that we can narrate to our young people and model to them how we're feeling and not coping at that moment of time too, So if I might say even to, my young adult children, they might have a demand of me and I might just go, look, I've just got in from work, I've been talking to people all day. I don't have the spoons for this right now, so I'm going to have to look at it tomorrow, and that's okay, because then they're learning that it's okay to, if you can't do the thing, it's okay to set those boundaries. It's okay to prioritise yourself so that you can be in that place, so then you can, connect with the person. Obviously, it's hard when they're really little and they do have physical needs or safety needs. But, I think it's still great for them to know when you're not, when you're not coping.
Definitely. Thank you. Miriam, what about you? What's your true north been?
It's very similar in a way, in terms of having, I guess, that self-compassion, especially doing the best job that you can. And my thing that I try to do, it relates to what Theresa was talking about, the social clock and sort of the societal expectations and comparisons, which can lead to future worries. So if I don't do X, Y, Z, what I'm supposed to do for my children at this age, then, they're not going to be able to be independent, or they won't, they're not going to be functioning in the real world. I guess that's a phrase that we hear quite often, I want them to be able to cope in the real world later on. So sometimes I think it is helpful to think, if you're noticing some of those cues that relating to stress or anxiety, to check in with yourself. Am I, comparing? Am I engaging in some future worries? So that's sort of in the distance. We can't predict what's going to happen in the future, but just coming back to that present moment, I guess, relating to that mindfulness piece, coming back to the present moment and what's important right now, and trying to make a choice. And if that's needing to reduce demands for yourself and your child, for example, and you just I need a cuppa, and so I'm just going to watch Bluey on the couch together for 10 minutes because we both need a breather, that's fine. And modelling that and talking that out loud is really helpful. And as well as those restorative conversations as well, because then you're teaching your child in a way about how to do that self-reflection piece and coming back to the table to say, I realise that I was a bit grumpy in that moment, but it wasn't something that you did. I had a bad night's sleep, or I had a rough day at work, and I'm really sorry. Let's do X, let's spend a bit of time together, or do you want to help me, get dinner, or what do you want for dinner? So for a younger child, it's going to be pretty short and sweet, but it is definitely a foundation that I've seen build over time, from the clients that I work with, teaching them that, or parents modelling that process. I can see it now, several years later, that the young person is using those kinds of strategies and can do that self-reflection. And I guess it's both parties being able to try and resolve something or problem solve together.
Beautiful. Yeah, I used to say that when my boys were small. They're going to be amazing at apologies because I had to give a lot out. And they are getting really great as teenagers. Yeah, it's really nice to see their ability to connect after a hard moment. And it's so powerful, isn't it, when we get to repair. I love everything you've shared. It's been a real treasure trove of wisdom, and I hope that the parents listening go away with a real sense of being uplifted. Your passion and your empathy really shine through everything that you both do, so I really appreciate everything you offer to families. And I'm wondering if parents listening in would like to learn more about the Kidd Clinic or about each of you, where can they find out more?
So they can go to our website, so Kidd Clinic, KIDD Clinic, all one word, .com.au, or on the socials as well. We have an amazing team member who posts regularly on our socials. So, yeah, just look up the Kidd Clinic on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn. And, yeah, you'll find lots of information. You can join up our newsletter as well. We do a free resource every month often for parents. And so if you join up the newsletter, then you just get automatically sent that free resource as well.
I've really enjoyed those. Thank you. I've been on the newsletter for a while and the resources are great. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. It was great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Thanks, Belynda.
This podcast is produced by Meerilinga, thanks to funding from Healthway. I'm Belynda Smith, Manager of Parenting Services at Meerilinga. If you'd like to know more, you can visit our website, www.meerilinga.org.au, or if you'd like to get in touch, send us an email, parenting@meerilinga.org.au, or visit us on socials.